Have you ever been asked to do something impossible? Not for glory, not for yourself, but because someone you loved depended on it. Perseus did not face Medusa as a hero seeking fame. He went as a son protecting his mother. And what he discovered was not simply a monster. It was a mirror. Before we meet the Gorgon, we need to understand two men: the one who sent Perseus to his death, and the young man who refused to let that be the end of the story. King Polydectes ruled Seriphos with charm and calculation. He was the kind of man who smiled while plotting, who spoke of honor while practicing control. He wanted Danae, Perseus's mother, and she refused him, again and again. Perseus stood between them, young but watchful, protective, a living barrier between the king's desire and his mother's freedom. Polydectes couldn't simply kill him. That would reveal his true nature. So he devised something crueler, a death disguised as honor. At a public feast, he announced the challenge and asked Perseus to bring him the head of Medusa. He spoke as if it were sport, but everyone knew the truth. Medusa's gaze turned men to stone. No one returned. Perseus saw the trap immediately. Refuse, and he'd be shamed, cast out, leaving his mother unprotected. Accept, and he'd almost certainly die. Either way, Polydectes won. So Perseus made a third choice. He said yes, not because he believed he would survive, but because as long as he was alive and trying, the king couldn't touch Danae. And maybe you know this feeling, being caught between impossible options, where saying no means abandoning someone you love, but saying yes might destroy you. This is where real courage begins, not in confidence, not in certainty, but in refusing to abandon what matters, even when the odds are impossible. Perseus set out alone, or so he thought. The path before him was impossible, a mortal sent to face something no mortal could look at. But the gods were watching. Athena appeared first, goddess of wisdom, strategy, and clear sight. She did not see reckless bravery in Perseus. She saw something rarer, thoughtful resolve. She placed in his hands a polished shield, smooth as still water. The shield was not a weapon, it was perspective. It taught him that some dangers cannot be faced head-on. Some truths must be approached indirectly, through awareness, thought, distance. Wisdom does not rush toward what destroys it. It studies. It reflects. Then Hermes arrived, messenger of the gods, god of thresholds and movement. He brought winged sandals, light enough to lift him above the ground, and a curved blade, sharp and precise. The sandals were not only for speed, they were for elevation, the ability to rise above what would otherwise trap you. The blade was not rage, it was discernment. To cut cleanly, act decisively, to know when hesitation becomes danger. Perseus hesitated. Part of him wanted to prove himself, to say, I did this alone. But wisdom is knowing when to accept what is offered. Strength is not isolation. It is alignment. And the gifts did not end there. Through hidden paths and strange encounters, Perseus was led to ancient nymphs who guarded sacred tools. From them, he received a dark helm, once worn by Hades himself, the helm of invisibility. With it, he could disappear, not to hide in fear, but to move unseen when survival required it. Sometimes the greatest power is not being seen. Sometimes protection means stepping out of the gaze of danger. And he was given a simple-looking pouch, the Pegasus, a container strong enough to hold what could not be touched. Because even after Medusa was defeated, her power would remain. And power without containment destroys. The pouch was not glory. It was responsibility. The ability to carry something dangerous without letting it spill into the world. Now Perseus stood equipped, not invincible, not guaranteed victory, equipped, the shield, reflection, the sandals, elevation, the blade, decisive action, the helm, strategic withdrawal, the pouch, containment. He understood something then. The gods were not guaranteeing success. They were watching how he would use power. Would he act from ego or from awareness? Would he dominate or take responsibility? Would he use what he was given with wisdom? The gifts were not shortcuts. They were tests. Because true strength is not the absence of help. It is knowing how to carry it. Medusa's island was silent. Statues lay everywhere. Men frozen mid-charge, mid-prayer, mid-scream. Proof that courage without awareness becomes destruction. Fear gripped Perseus, but he did not run. He raised Athena's shield and moved by reflection alone. And there, in its surface, he saw her. Not a beast. A woman. Once a priestess. Violated by Poseidon. Punished not by her attacker, but by the goddess she served. Her power was born from injustice. Her gaze was not cruelty. It was a boundary forged from pain. Perseus understood this, and still he moved forward. Not with hatred, not with triumph, but with necessity. There was no other path that spared the innocent. His steps were measured, his breath steady, and when the moment came, his hand did not shake. As Medusa fell, something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not absolution, recognition. Two people trapped by forces larger than themselves. Two lives shaped by the cruelty of gods and the violence of men. From her blood, Pegasus rose, winged and free, carrying the power of suffering into the sky as hope and transformation. And Chrysaor, a golden warrior, born from her neck, a force of courage and strength, rising from tragedy to uphold justice. Perseus returned to Seriphos. The feast was still underway. Polydectes laughed at the center of the hall, already certain of victory. At that moment, Perseus knew. Some people do not deserve explanations. Some cruelty understands only consequence. Perseus revealed the head. The king and his court turned to stone, monuments to their own arrogance. Danae was safe. The island was free. Perseus did not celebrate. He understood the weight of what he'd done. He'd used Medusa's power, born from her suffering, to stop another kind of violence. He gave Medusa's head to Athena, who placed it on her shield. And what was once called a curse became a guardian, a warning to those who abuse power, a protection for those who cannot protect themselves. An ending became a beginning. This myth isn't really about slaying monsters. It speaks of impossible choices we face when protecting what matters most. Men like Polydectes, charming yet cruel, disguising control as honor and possession as love. People like Perseus, afraid, uncertain, yet unwilling to abandon those who depend on them. And Medusa, not a monster to be destroyed, but a wounded woman, who built her walls so high that no one could ever hurt her again. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is clarity in its presence. And sometimes the hardest thing is recognizing that complexity, that the world isn't simple, that justice and tragedy can exist in the same moment, that you can do what's necessary and still grieve what it cost. Perseus faced Medusa because he was asked to do the impossible, not for glory, but for love. So the myth leaves us with a question. What have you been asked to face? And what if the thing you fear most is trying to show you where your strength begins?